Hey, this is Shabir Sultan. In this episode of Project Zero, we explore Singaporean roots, fusion, and whether there truly exists a Singapore sound. First up, we have Wang Chenwei, composer in residence of the Singapore Chinese Orchestra and head of research and education at the Teng Company. Wang Chenwei holds a Magister Artium with distinction from the University of Music and Performing Arts, Vienna. He's known for his numerous compositions, including The Sisters Islands, which won the Singapore Composer Award in 2006. His works have been performed internationally and he's received accolades such as the Young Artist Award from the National Arts Council, Singapore. Next, we have Chok Kerong, a composer, producer and keyboardist recognized for his versatility. Kerong's arrangements and compositions have been performed by various renowned artists and ensembles, including his own chamber ensemble, 11. He's also known for his work in jazz, performing at prestigious events like the Tokyo Jazz Festival. This is Project Zero, a journey to discover the Singapore sound. All right, so in this episode, we have with us Chenwei and Kerong. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So this is Project Zero, a journey to discover the Singapore sound. I know Chenwei is going to have a bone to pick with the title itself because it says Singapore sound, and Chenwei is a proponent of saying there must be Singapore sounds, which is a cool thing, which is a very salient point, and I do agree with that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And to start off, maybe Chenwei, you can tell us, what's the scope of work that you do in the scene as a classical composer, and at the same time, what is your relationship with the Singapore sound or sounds?
Yeah, okay. Vanakkam, Tiru Shabir.
Vanakkam.
Nigo Saukiama.
Nalla irukku, neenga eppadi irukeenga?
Okay, so I'm the composing resident of Singapore Chinese Orchestra. I also teach composition modules at NIE and orchestration for Chinese music at NAFA. Okay, so most of my work has in the recent years has been for Chinese orchestra. Even though my training was my formal training in music was entirely Western. Yeah, so I went to university in Vienna to study composition, right? Yeah, so it's actually just out of circumstances that I end up so deeply engaged within the Chinese orchestra community, and that was because when I was in secondary school, I was posted to the Chinese orchestra, right? So basically, we had to choose the co-curricular activities, fill in a form, and then we went to look at all the different music CCAs, and then I saw the military band and they had to do push-ups. Then I thought, okay, I don't want to do push-ups, so what can I choose? So, okay, so guitar ensemble and Chinese orchestra, they surely don't need to do push-ups. So I filled in that, and I got posted to a Chinese orchestra. Right. So actually, I was just wondering if the admin clerk had put my name under another CCA, my life would have been very different now.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite similar. I can resonate with that because all I wanted to do is just sing songs. But I got inducted into the Tamil Language Learning and Promotion Committee. And that suddenly, made me very interested in the language and the culture. And that led me to actually ask these questions. What is the meaning of being a Tamil person, an Indian, a Singaporean, all these things. So I think all my existential questions started from there, because before that I was just like, okay, I'm just doing music, I'm singing, that kind of thing. And I think Kerong has got a very similar experience like that, where, you came in and then you were predominantly like you wanted to, as a child, you listened to a lot of pop. Yep. And you were experiencing that, and then jazz happened, and of course you're doing quite a number of things. The album with Vanessa was really cool because it's kind of genre fluid, right? It's going through funk. There's a bit of R&B vibe there, and there's also pop, and of course you can hear the traces of jazz there. So how did that happen? How did you become like sort of genre fluid?
Well, thanks for bringing up the album with Vanessa. It's one of my favorite projects to date. And I think the reason for that is it's kind of a full circle moment for me, because it represents all the music that I listened to growing up, except that now I'm a bit more mature and I know how to dissect things a little bit more, and I know how to channel it in my own way. So I listened to that stuff growing up, and then I studied a lot of jazz. I went to school for it and spent a lot of time on that craft. But it's funny how we just return to what we originally love in the end, with all those other elements that you pick up along the way mixed in there. Yeah, so that's the short version of my journey. Basically starting with what I heard on radio, and going studying all this technique and or absorbing all this information, and then trying to become a child again, if that makes any sense.
Totally. I think the operative word for music is play.
Yeah.
So I think we got to play always. We can't take the play out of that.
Yeah, and I'm trying to more and more in my interactions with other musicians and working with songwriters and all that. I just try to throw everything, all sorts of preconceived notions about music out the window as much as I can, because then there's room for discovery.
For sure. Yeah. I do believe that the whole process, for me at least, how it works is that I will learn when I'm not creating as much as I can, and I will educate myself. I'll be learning a lot of things. I'll be reading stuff, trying new techniques and stuff. But when it comes to the process of creation, I try to throw all that out of the window and let the subconscious do its job.
Right.
Not be conscious about things.
Yep.
And I think that's one way things work for me. I also want to talk about the most important thing that we're here to talk about, which is, the Singapore sound. And the three of us have experimented in our own ways, our own versions of it, I believe. Let's start with Chenwei. To make the Singapore sound effective, the starting point is fusion. Some sort of fusion has to happen there, right? What is your view on fusion, and how do you contextualize fusion, which is such a broad concept, can be anything, to the Singapore sound?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think fusion is particularly important for Singapore because we don't have like a traditional musical style. And for traditional musical style to form in a place, actually, it would need to have a period of relative isolation. So a style will comprise of certain elements of influence, but also the exclusion of other elements of influence. And so Singapore was cosmopolitan from the very beginning, and so there wasn't like a style that was a natural style that developed. And so my approach to this question of Singapore sound has a lot to do with fusion, because I would try to pinpoint this geographical location through the fusion of Chinese, Malay, and Indian musical elements, right? So if I compose a piece that is entirely Chinese in style or entirely Indian style, then it could also be from China or from India. But if we have a piece that is a mix of Chinese and Malay musical elements, then that would be very rare in China, and that would justify more strongly as something coming from Singapore. So for fusion, I would say in Singapore, the fusion is a rather cliche term that is often used superficially to suggest racial harmony and multiculturalism. So let's first look at what I don't consider to be fusion, right? So many people conflate the ethnicity of the instrument with the music itself. Yeah, I would like to say that the instrument is not the music, right? So if I play Paganini on the erhu, it's not Chinese music and it's not fusion. It is just simply Western music, right? Or if a Chinese, Malay, and Indian musician play a pop song together, it's not fusion, it's just pop, right? So swapping out the violin for an erhu doesn't make the musical content any more Chinese. So I once did a workshop for arrangement for Chinese instruments, and I was explaining all the techniques of the pipa. And then one attendee said, hold on, I think we can skip a bit of this, right? So actually in our line of work, we just need to put a pipa player on stage and write something playable for it. And even if we wrote something very idiomatic, our target audience wouldn't appreciate it, right? So basically in Singapore, I think unfortunately, sometimes we tend to keep fusion to a rather tokenistic level, like we just invite the musicians and then that's it. But then I think we shouldn't just stop there. We should explore further, and it's great that we are able to gather musicians from different cultures together and having this very possibility, right? We can learn from each other to elevate our musical content and learn from each other's cultures.
Chenwei, you made a great point there, and it kind of resonates with me. it cannot be tokenistic. It must come from the heart, because intention is so important in the creation of any art, right? It all starts with the intention. What do you intend to do? And if the intention is just to check the boxes of CMIO, then it's a very wrong starting place, if you ask me. Of course, the idea of representation is very noble, for sure. That everyone needs to be equally represented. But how we approach that and what's the intention to do it I feel it should always come from a place of curiosity and genuine, curiosity and understanding. I want to know more about you. I want to include this music into my piece. I want to make it something more wholesome. That should be the place, not just, okay, I got an assignment, I need to do it. And it shouldn't be about the assignment. It should be about what the artist is feeling at that point. And Kerong, have you met these junctures before where you have the responsibility of doing some level of fusion in the music that you do? And you are you're supposed to approach it right now. And what is your approach to ensure that there is authenticity?
I consider myself to be quite. I rely heavily on my instincts. So process-wise, if I'm given something that requires me to channel something or apply something that I'm not familiar with, I would go through a period of research, but not really in an academic way. I would just listen to a lot of that particular music that I need to know about, but I don't try to codify it or anything like that. I just try to get the sound in my ear. And then from there, hopefully with the limited time that I have, when I start to create, I try to look for common ground between what I know and what I'm not so familiar with. And I trust that my sensitivity would tell me when something is working and when something is just there for the sake of being there. And I think that comes with experience. No matter what style of music you play, you have this ear for what you know would work and what is sincere and what is not. What is what wouldn't be a good fit.
Right.
I think we know instinctively when we hear it.
And of course, there are times where we have to do trade-offs because mostly it's because client is chasing us, we're on a deadline. So at that point, because fusion is it's a huge task, to create something like that. Of course, you can do it. There's many ways to do it. But as you said, we artists, we are more sensitive, to a lot of things. And when we apply our sensitivity with time, something beautiful can come out of it. And what we're talking about when we talk about, things like fusion and being sensitive, to incorporating the instruments of other cultures into our music that we're creating, we are nurturing something. Because in Singapore, as Chenwei rightfully pointed out, there is no nature, which means, what I mean by that is we don't naturally have a Singapore sound. So now we're thinking of nurturing a Singapore sound. If it's not nature, then it's got to be nurture. So when it comes to the approach of nurturing a Singapore sound, we all would agree that it cannot be like a tokenistic. It also cannot be a superficial exercise. It needs to come from your heart. It needs to be intuitive and things like that. When you are approaching, let's say you're given an assignment then there is like Indian instrument and there is Malay instruments and things like that. I always feel like if you want to do a fusion, there needs to be something which is the genre that binds everything together. Like you could do rock and you can bring in an opera singer to sing, but there's still that whole thing that's the foundation. And if I'm doing hip hop, I'm doing rap music, it's very easy to fuse elements into it. But when it comes to a soundtrack context for me, because I'm a film composer as well, and for you, you're doing jazz, you're doing pop, and other related genres to Chenwei, we're doing classical. The core genre becomes something. We already fix on something, right? Most often, we will have the core genre, and then we start fusing things. Is that a problem? That particular approach that we may take, where we fix a particular genre to be the main genre, and then we're incorporating instruments into that. Kerong, I'll start with you.
In my case, for example, if we have a foundation of jazz, there's a lot of room. So that's the advantage. And I think because of the openness of that foundation, in my particular case, I don't really see a problem with it. I mean, that's just from my perspective. I think if there's that foundation, it's okay to have that as long as we still maintain that sensitivity. And also to the best of our abilities, try to understand what we are trying to build on that foundation. And then listen back. And if it makes you feel something and it feels real to you, then I think we can go with it.
Yeah, because if it feels real to you, there are going to be a few people out there who are going to connect to that too.
Yeah. And on the other side of it, I think if something is applied just for its own sake, that intention comes through in the music. It would be obvious to some, if not all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the pitfall.
Chenwei, we have had initial discussions and you really opened my mind on something where you categorize fusion, the various types of fusion. Could you talk about that?
Yeah. Okay. So I identify like from the perspective of a composer, I identify 4 types of fusion in musical content. Okay. So firstly is harmonic fusion, right? That is using Western harmonies to accompany music that traditionally didn't have it, which is the most predominant form of fusion, right? For example, we have Chinese tune and then we put Western harmony below it. So the second type is sequential fusion. So that is presenting elements from different musical styles one after the other. Right. So let's say I have one section that sounds Chinese and another section that sounds Malay, right? So, and the third is contrapuntal fusion, which is presenting elements from different musical styles simultaneously in counterpoint. Okay, so for example, let's say I have a melody, a Chinese melody, and a Indian style counter melody. So this is a bit harder to do because it requires the two or more melodic elements to harmonize, right? And the fourth type is hybrid fusion. So this is like giving birth to a hybrid musical style, like a child born to parents of different ethnicities, right? So in this case, the resultant musical style has features of all the influences that went into it, but the influences cannot be isolated. Okay, so I'll give an example of the hybrid fusion. So I composed a quintet for Chinese instruments titled Vanda Miss Joachim. Right, so that is, as we know, is our national flower, and that is a hybrid flower, by the way. Right, so I'm using the hybridity of this flower to as an analogy for musical hybridity. Okay, so this one of the key features is that this piece is based on a raga that I invented. Right, so as we know, the ragas can have a different ascending and descending scale. Okay, so let's say you have a rag pilu, ni sa ga ma pa ni sa. Sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. So the third scale degree is natural on the way up and flat on the way down, right? So okay, so I mean, we are singing in the normal Western solfege, ti do mi fa so ti do ti le so fa me re do. Okay, so we have 2 flat notes on the way down. So this is one of the inspiration for me. Then I just thought, so what if I have a ascending scale that comes from the Malay archipelago and descending scale that is Chinese? So I used the Palok scale as ascending, do mi fa so ti do, and the descending scale is a Chinese 语调 语 mode, do te so fa me do, right? And besides the scale, the raga also includes characteristic ornamentation or slides or like stylistic features. And so I also put that in part of my design. So for example, I've got slides do mi fa so ti do te so fa me do mi fa so te so fa me do, right? So for example, my main theme is do mi fa so. Okay. Before I mention one more thing, so I also incorporated some asli ornaments from the Malay asli dance music. So like da da da, that kind of like a turn like ornament. So my melody is something like do mi fa so so fi so. So that was an asli ornament. Fa mi fa me do ti do te so fa. Okay, so in this way, I incorporated Indian musical elements, Malay like Nusantara elements and Chinese elements, and these are all integrated into the framework. As in, you can't take out isolate any of the elements. Unlike, let's say, counterpuntal fusion. Okay, so you have a Chinese melody and an Indian counter melody, then you can like separate them, the two of them, or like a harmonic fusion, like you can take away the chords and you get back the original tune. Right. So this is my approach to hybrid fusion.
Right. And your approach is you resort to hybrid fusion more than the others, and the others are mere devices even if you use them, but the approach would be hybrid fusion.
Okay. I would like to say that there's none of them is necessarily superior to the other, but just that we have these different choices available, and probably, let's say, in some pieces I might use one type of fusion, and other pieces might use another type of fusion, depending on the what fits best for the music. But I would say like counter fusion and hybrid fusion are have been less explored by the others. Right, so as I said, the most common is the harmonic fusion, because we already have a very well-developed framework of Western harmony and jazz harmony. Basically, anything that is sort of close to our tempered scale, we can apply harmony to it, and then we just harmonize it according to the rules of classical harmony or jazz harmony. And the sequential fusion is also relatively easy. Let's say we can have a medley of a Chinese folk song and a Malay folk song, right? But the counterpuntal fusion and hybrid fusion has been requires a bit more sophistication of thought, and have also been less explored.
Right. And even something as simple as sequential fusion, when we think about it, it could be used to say something very complex too, and it could be presented in a complex manner if the sequence is planned out in a way where it's supposed to be a question and an answer, a question and an answer, and maybe there could be musical events that happen in the first sequence that is being sort of alluded to in the second sequence, and to the normal person they may not find all these things, but the musician who's creating the sequential fusion could infuse these elements and it could become complex. So I do believe that in what you say, that it need not be necessary that one particular form of fusion is more superior compared to the other. It all depends on the artist who's handling that type of fusion too. And this approach is very fascinating for me, to be very honest, because I'm more like a Kerong. I go with my intuition. I listen to the instrument and I see what it's speaking to me, and then I kind of put it together. But I think I want to try this at some point because it sounds crazy, actually. Yeah, it sounds crazy. I'd like to give it a shot, And you had to learn like Indian classical music, I'm pretty sure, before you started working on this project, right?
Still learning.
Still learning, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think that's beautiful, because when we start understanding each other's, traditions and cultures, I think it really changes something in us. And we Singaporeans, we are already a hybrid of sorts, right? We are Malayans in a sense, we're all like mixed with something, in some way. It could be our taste in music, films, culture, literature, even, our genes, our genetics. We could be mixed in many, many ways, and our personalities too. And when we can find time to actually incorporate that into our art, I think it could create fascinating results like what, and I checked out the works that you did. I think it was kind of insane, especially the ones where you include the Korwei into your score, and then there's like Western classical, Chinese classical, and there's Korwei happening. So that's like pretty sick. And I feel like those kind of things can only happen here in Singapore. Those kind of things like rather than can only happen here in Singapore, these are one of the very few places in the world where something like that could happen, because it just naturally allows for that. You see, I always draw this parallel, like we Singaporeans, artists, unlike big countries like China and India, we're not separated by the hills and the regions and stuff like that. There's not like Northeast people got this music and then people in the South got this music, and they can't really meet because they're geographically limited. So they don't really come together. We come together every single day, like our neighbors, everyone, we see everyone each other. And there's once, I read your article and where you said that you were walking at a place and there was a wedding happening and there were Malay, ensemble playing, percussion ensemble playing. That inspired you to create a piece. These things could happen to us every single day, and it's about how receptive we are to incorporate that into our music and try something. But sometimes I also feel like, are there incentives to do it? If you're interested, yes. But if, let's say, are there enough incentives for us to embark on such projects where we actually want to, fuse elements from other cultures and other races and explore the instruments? Because I don't think, Kerong, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think just by incorporating like multiracial instruments, I don't think there's necessarily an audience for it outside of NDP and Jingge and all that. So what are the challenges in that area? Like, it's not something that I wake up and think of, okay, today I'm going to do this. We rather think about our home genres, how we're going to create something in that. Mm-hmm. So what are the challenges you see in kind of pushing the envelope in that area, including being more genre fluid, including the instruments of other races and cultures into our music?
If we ask Singaporeans, like mostly Singaporeans, what they think of as Singaporean music, they will probably mention the National Day songs or some Malay language songs, or Xin Yao, which is the Chinese pop songs that started in the 70s. So these songs, mostly their association with Singapore is by the lyrics, right? So if you take away the lyrics, then there might not be many identifiable features of the music being Singaporean, as you point out. Like might be if you put it down in the international scene, then it might also be thought of as very similar to other international productions. And I think that is also not necessarily a bad thing, because they arose out of our natural social circumstances, and also form an important part of our culture. And so the recognition actually depends predominantly on publicity through mass media, and that's why some songs that are promoted at the national levels get a greater form of recognition. And this is also how Muniru Aliba became the song that is most strongly associated with the Singaporean Indian community, right? Even though it doesn't have much features of traditional Indian music, right? So it's practically become like a song for non-Indian Singaporeans to fulfill their multiracial needs, right?
Fulfill their multiracial needs. I love that. Okay.
And I'm glad that Singa Nadu has been gaining increased recognition, right? I think is a positive development, right? Because Singa Nadu has identifiable features of Carnatic music and traditional Indian music.
We all would love to find more opportunities to cross-collaborate, but at the same time, we also have the responsibility to stay authentic to the genre that we have been producing over a long time, what we're known for, So that's also important. And how do you preserve the authenticity of the genre that you're producing in when you're doing fusion?
So I guess we were talking about that foundational genre, going back to what we were, or the point we made earlier.
And I think you also mentioned in an interview, I found it useful to always think of the personalities more than a genre in the abstract, so it doesn't get reduced to some generic pattern.
So I guess in terms of the personality, the people playing the music, if I know who they are in advance, I can write for them. And that usually, if I write with them in mind, the result is always better. And I don't know if they can feel it, but if I write for somebody, I want them to be very comfortable playing it. Like after they learn the music, they should feel like it was for them.
I love that. Yeah.
So that's one of my strategies, regardless of what genre.
I think that strategy is applicable to what we're talking about too. But there's a responsibility, which is you have to know people now.
Well, exactly. And I think I probably learned that from Duke Ellington. He talks about that a lot. Like he keeps the people the people in his ensemble in mind.
The humans,
Yeah. And that's as composers, I think we're also selling our work to the people playing it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to feel like, oh, this is such a drag, I don't want to play this music, So I take that into consideration when I write. And I think just having that in mind, combined with our sensitivities and the practical task of making sure that the rehearsal goes smoothly and everyone has a good time and there's enough room, there's stuff on the page, but there's enough room for people to express themselves within the constraints of the composition usually results in something that would have a feeling. And that's all I'm going for.
Chenwei.
Yeah, I can use my arrangement of Singer and Other as an example. So actually, I didn't try to synthesize the song anyway. I listened to the original and the cover version and tried to replicate the same feel as in your MVs. So one advantage of that Chinese instruments have in playing the music of other cultures is the sensitivity to stylistic nuances, right? So like in Western music, actually, basically we all have discrete pictures, right? We don't generally that there is rarely a music that have slides or other kinds of
going microtonal and all that.
As part of as the main focus of the music, right? So so when Western instruments play music from Asian cultures, they tend to round off everything to the nearest discrete note. And then basically you just wipe off all the stylistic nuances, but the whole Western music is geared towards harmony, and because for the sake of harmony, we need everything to be, the pictures to be very precise, right? But most Asian musical cultures did not develop around harmony. Instead, it developed around sophistication in melodic nuances. And so the instead of looking at the precise pictures, we are looking at pictures that involve inflections, right? Which might most obviously will be in terms of pitch, but they can also be other kinds of inflections. And so there's a Chinese professor called Shen Qia who brought out this concept of yin qiang, right? And which I will translate as inflected notes. So that means the whole understanding of a note is quite different in Asian cultures versus in the West. So in the West, when we say a note, we usually assume that it's a single pitch, right? If you do something like da, then in the Western music, they will say, okay, there's three components. You have a mi, you have a so, and then you have a slide in between. But in Chinese music or Indian music, that slide actually consists of part of one note, right? So let's say even if you look at YouTube tutorials of like demonstration of Indian ragas, sa ni re ga, like ni re ga, that re contains a slide from ga, right? But
still seen as
but the singer considers as one note, and in the soul page she also sings as one note. So this means that the whole understanding of what a note is quite different in the West versus in the East, which now gets a little bit diluted because the Chinese instrumentalists also use a cipher notation or like a staff notation, which ends up like transcribing all of them like in a very Western oriented kind of philosophy. Okay, so but the whole point is that this is something that I feel that the Chinese instruments have an advantage over symphony orchestra instruments. So like in Singer and Other, you have quite I when I listen to your singing voice, I actually transcribe quite a lot of the slides. Singer and Other, okay, so I drew the arrows like exactly where the players are supposed to slide, and the starting solo also in the cover version. So I drew all the arrows at the parts where the players are supposed to slide, and the diesel player basically any experienced diesel player, when they see all this and say, okay, I can sort of get what you're trying to say, and then maybe they just go and listen to the MV once, and then they say, okay, so that's the feel of it, and they can replicate it quite close, something quite close to the original, and that is a sensitivity towards the melodic nuances, because even if they are not trained in Indian music, like in the play performance of Chinese music, they come across this kind of slides very frequently, and then say, okay, now we have to do the slides, but it's just on different notes and in a slightly different flavor, but you know, they can learn it very quickly.
Right, and there's also I realized that there is a natural advantage in preserving authenticity when you're writing for something like that, because Chinese classical music already allows that, because these systems are already in place. So it's kind of easier to preserve the authenticity, as opposed to, if someone is strictly doing Western composition, because these systems are not in place.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite interesting. And when we talk about these things, right, all these culminate to one thing, which is there a Singapore sound? Will all these things help us get closer to the Singapore sound? But Chenwei, you once told me that if we have to sit down and talk about it, then probably there is no Singapore sound.
The whole fact that we are talking about it right now means that there still isn't, or at least the idea is still not very clear.
Yeah. And I did not create this podcast because I want to achieve the Singapore sound. That's not my thing. I just want to talk first. I just want to know. I want to bring awareness. I want to learn. I want to share. And hopefully when we all, because it's not every day we get to come together and talk about this, right? This is a topic, even if we are meeting just for coffee, I don't think we're going to talk about this first. We're going to talk about other things. So that's what I'm talking about when I say nurture. Like, we have to create these opportunities to kind of talk. And tomorrow, probably there'll be more opportunities for us to come together and not talk, but create with our instruments and, with our voices, with our lyrics and things like that. You did mention that the search for the Singapore sound is a challenging quest. We're all working hard towards it. However, the real reward often comes from the process of searching rather than whether we arrive at a definite answer. To be very honest, I don't think I'm working hard at it. It's there in my psyche. I'm interested in the subject. I don't gain any immediate rewards by doing it, but I like it because, I have love for the country that I'm born in and my people, and I want to find ways to express it in my music too, apart from doing other things that I love to do. But this whole thing of it's the process rather than a definite answer, that struck a chord with me. And I want to ask Kerong, this particular process, do you think it's rewarding for you whenever you get an opportunity, or is that a burden?
I would say in the beginning it's a challenge, but in the process, when you find solutions you're trying to make this blend better, or you're trying to figure out how to present this melody with this accompaniment, and it's something you don't completely understand, and then you keep chipping away at it, then one day you find the answer. I mean, that's the best thing, because then, you have one more bit of vocabulary that you can rely on for the next thing, and it builds. And maybe on a larger scale, with everyone doing that at the same time, we all are forming some sort of vocabulary of our own. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
But when you find those solutions, that's, to me, the best part of the composing process. Yeah.
That moment.
Yeah, that's the one. But at first, you don't know what's happening because you're just trying to figure things out in the dark, But I like that process of not knowing. Yeah, because that means there's potential. Yeah.
For me, the process has been personally very beneficial. I would say more as a film composer, because for film composition, especially in India, when you're working in the Indian film industry, it's not so much it doesn't lean on Western classical to create the film score. It leans more on world music, rather the opposite. Like if you listen to the Slumdog Millionaire score, it's a Grammy and Oscar winning score, right? When you listen to it, you realize that, it is, there are a lot of world music elements in that score, and that's how the whole Indian film industry, the music industry operates. It leans to world music. The perspective is world music, but there are also Western classical, EDM, all these things coming in to produce a film score. And by being born in Singapore, for some reason, I feel like I have an advantage because I have the knowledge and access and awareness of all the various instruments. If I was maybe born in India, I might only think of Indian instruments and Western instruments. I would think of it like that. And now, the pipa and the tongguan, it's not exotic for me. I can just weave it in and make it very seamless, without making it seem like, I'm doing something different. In fact, some of my scores has got the erhu, my film scores. But no one has said that, that Chinese music part, I like it. No one has said that. It was like, I love that theme. That's it, boom. Then I know that I've done something.
The success,
I know that there is some success there. Of course, I wish there were more opportunities to expand this and do more of it. And that's why we're talking about creating more environment, right? Creating environments which support such collaborations. And the process at the end of the day, it's rewarding because we also get to learn, and we musicians love to learn because it's a lifelong process for us. We can never say that we know everything. It's always a drop in an ocean for us, when we learn something new. And Chenwei, the process is certainly rewarding than getting a definite answer. But as what Kerong said, of course, it's good to have that moment, like, oh man, that's a sweet spot, when you arrive there. Have you felt any of your compositions have fulfilled that requirement of you have arrived at a point where it's a very, important juncture in your exploration of the Singapore sound? This is that piece that actually kind of completes that journey, or at least it's a very important milestone in your journey.
The catch is that every answer you get leads to more questions.
Like life itself, huh?
Literally, like the more you know, the more you know how much you don't know.
Yeah.
And with regards to traditional musics, especially usually those coming from a Western musical background would think that they are simple because they listen it from a Western perspective. That means they listen to things like this music doesn't have harmony, and then it's slow, and then it's has not many not a wide range of pitches. Then how hard can it be? But the sophistication lies in elements that one might have not noticed, like for example the melodic nuances, or let's say give an example. Like there's interacted with musicians from Sarawak, right? So in one kind of singing is like when the performer like is singing something, and then the audience a member of the audience, if he would like to praise the performance, he will sing a complimentary phrase to the song to complement the singer. So a complimentary phrase to complement the
So there's a collaboration happening between the artist and the audience.
Yeah, and let's think about it. In the Western music community, even a trained Western musician, I think it's very hard to do that. You imagine somebody singing and you say, okay, now you have to sing improvise a phrase that harmonizes with that song, and then everybody would probably just freeze, right? So that means, but if we didn't know there was such a thing, we just listened to a group of them singing, then you just think, oh, somebody was started singing and then another guy started singing along with it, and you don't know what's the whole concept behind that thing. Then you think it's a very simple thing. So, oh, this is so simple, I can also do it. But when you really try to do it, then you realize, okay, there's absolutely there's a lot of things that you are not obvious upon your first listening. Right, and so likewise the same with traditional Chinese music genres. Like before I learned Nanyin. So Nanyin is like a ancient genre of Chinese music that is practiced by the Hokkien communities. Then I thought, okay, so this is, even though I've been in the Chinese orchestra for like 20 years, then I just feel like, oh, this music is so slow, and then it's all almost playing in unison, how difficult I can be. Then until I went to Xiongling to have lessons, then I realized, oh no, this is absolutely not simple, right? So all this like every genre of music has got gems of wisdom that we wouldn't have been aware of if we just listen to it superficially. Like once we start trying to do it or trying to incorporate it into our compositions, then we realize that how deep the rabbit hole is.
Yeah, and that makes me conclude that when we cross collaborate and we get to learn so much, and we get to do a journey which is inward. When we learn about instruments, more instruments, and other Singaporean musical cultures. So I don't think the benefit is just national and social when we collaborate. I think for the individual, it's also artistic, creative, and spiritual, because it sets you on a journey and it makes you ask more questions, and always more questions leads to, more answers. Yeah, if you are journeying on the right path. So I do think that there's a lot to benefit when we take this route and we, kind of become more curious about each other's musical cultures until it becomes ours. Like I would say that when I'm writing the film score, for me, the process is such where, as Hans Zimmer said, if somebody tells you there's a rule, break it. That's the only thing that makes things move forward. I'm a huge fan of that. So first I learn everything as much as I can, but then later I'm trying to break as many rules as I can. When I incorporate a particular instrument that's not from my culture, I'm trying to make the instrument behave differently than how it would behave in that particular, setting, in that cultural setting. So these things make it more, exciting, make the process more exciting. And my thing is always like, when all these instrumentalists are available, then why not try to collaborate more? Why not? Because it's not difficult. If I'm in Chennai composing for a film, I can't get, someone who plays the kompang in. It's not going to be possible, physically possible. I can, but I maybe need to fly, or there's so many hindrances for that to happen.
But if I'm in Singapore, it's just a call away and I can get someone in, and it's like so easy to set up that collaboration, but I don't think about it all the time. But I wish I did more, and I hope that after this project, I'm also programming my subconscious, right, as the host. I think it's going to show in the music that I'm about to create from now on, where there's going to be more like multicultural influences once this show is over, I think, because I'm going to be thinking more about it. I'm going to go to bed thinking about it. I'm going to wake up thinking about it. Yeah. So I think that's going to kind of spill over into my music as I create stuff. I love the fact that Kerong, the main takeaway from you, is that it has to be very individualistic. It has to be very personal, and you have to be intuitive about the process. And it can never be something that is seen as an assignment. It should be something that you can resonate with. And if it doesn't resonate with, you shouldn't even do it, probably.
Yeah.
And I like that about. I like that honesty, because that honesty is so important for artists. Because the worst thing you want to do is get lost in all the noise, and then you don't even know who you are at the end of it. So I love the thanks for that sharing. And Chenwei, I love the fact that you go out of your way to learn, about other cultures and allow that to influence your writing. And I think both of you have taught me something very interesting today. Although it feels like it's complete opposites in that sense, both the key takeaways, but I believe that when it's blended together, it can result in a very interesting outcome for the artist who's pursuing some sort of artistic excellence. Chenwei's approach is go out there, learn everything, put yourself out there, and sometimes, even if it's not convenient, make efforts to learn things, and then let it transpire into your writing and incorporate that and explore yourself and the whole idea of the Singapore sound by through learning and experimenting. And Kerong's process is keep it organic, let it happen when it happens, and it will happen, and stay true to your craft and stay close to yourself as an artist in this journey.
Just do your thing, pretty much.
Do your thing, yeah, but be open to learning, let it happen when it happens. And I think I'm a hybrid of the both of you. I'm the Malayan, yeah. So I do both, which is, I have times where I forcibly learn. Like, for an example, I never listened to Bob Dylan before in my life. Okay, because, I'm not from that era and nobody introduced that music to me, his music to me. So what I did is, but I wanted to learn, because I keep seeing Bob Dylan. And I write poetry also, you see, apart from writing songs. And I wanted to know, because this person is also known as a poet and a songwriter. So what I did is I went on a journey, I got his biography. So I refused to listen to his music, but I started reading his biography. So I finished the whole book. Now I need to know, what music does this guy make? I want to know. And then I go and listen to the music, and everything was so different for me. Because I'm born in 1985. If I had heard Bob Dylan, the times are changing straight up, I'd be like, okay, what's that about? But now I understood context, because I'm made aware of the context right now. And when I listen to it, I can hear a lot of details, and a lot of things, the psychology of the writer and the people who are listening to that music. So I do have moments in my life where I force learn. I force myself to learn things, like what Chenwei does, where he goes out of the way to learn things. But for the most part, I'm also like Kerong, in the studio, I employ a technique where it's a conversation. I allow people to come in, do their thing. I leave it very open. I enjoy it. That may not be your technique in the studio, but I'm rather talking about the approach of making things organic, keeping things organic. I also employ that in my musical journey, where for the most part, I have these spurts of, forced learning, but at the same time, I'm also all about authenticity. Like, I want to journey, walk the path, and not rush things, and allow things to happen. Give room and space for things to happen organically. So I think today's podcast also taught me that the application of both methods and approaches will be very beneficial for the artists who might want to take the journey to explore the Singapore sound or sound. So thank you very much for your wisdom and your sharing. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no one back door.